Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And with OpTic Texas drawn into a pretty challenging group for Major 1 in Raleigh in a few days' time, Octane and others have given their thoughts on who the best player on OpTic is right now. The last few years there's been conversations about Dashy, Shotzzy, and even iLLeY at times back in Major 1, let's say in the Vanguard season. But Scump has been pretty clearly right now so far their dominant player. Octane agrees, everyone seems to agree as well, but can Scump keep up this level? And if he does not, who else on the team is going to step up to the plate? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Couple of quick updates to bring you guys. Firstly, on the Challenger Cup number 2 champions. So these are the teams that are potentially looking the scariest. A couple of these guys will be going to the play-in for Raleigh very soon. In the European side, it's the Elevate team. Classic, Yeez, Phantoms, and Rex win it in an A. APAC, it's Luca, Fighter, Zach, and Drazah. I believe Shox is meant to be here. Like, still, they've got the Luca, Fighter, Shox kind of combination there in APAC on Mindfreak. That has been the case for like almost a decade, it feels, at this point. Luca's obviously newer, but you know, Fighter and Shox have been around for ages. And then Team Smog from the Latin American region. Just because there's been so much happening the last few days, I haven't really had a chance to discuss this. But this whole Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard that's been a talking point for quite some time, apparently the FTC are trying to block this. Sony made a good case, I suppose, and it's going to get shut down. But Microsoft are not happy with this, and they're going to basically clap back and challenge the FTC in court. So, you know, I don't know. There's been lots of debate on this actually the last few days, whether the FTC are actually protecting the consumer here, or whether they're just protecting their mates in Sony. That's been kind of the discussion points. So look, we'll see how this goes. There's an argument either way, whether Microsoft should be able to buy Activision Blizzard from a kind of antitrust competition law perspective, or whether there's other kind of things in play. But I think it's been approved in most kind of regions. I think in Europe it's okay, maybe in South America it's okay, but that's why these things are so tricky to actually get through the courts, and it might take challenging the Federal Trade Commission in court in order to actually deal with this issue. So, you know, it's not exactly going to be soon, if ever, where Microsoft takes over Activision Blizzard and save Call of Duty. Like, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case anytime soon. But, yeah, just thought I'd give you guys a quick update on that one. Now, big update this week, actually, in terms of kills per weapon. We saw in the first weekend of the CDL, 72% almost of kills were with the M4, 25%-ish with the Vaznev. This weekend, a similar number in terms of everything else, in terms of nades falling off the map, even that doesn't really happen in this game, despite Clayster's best efforts. But the TAC 56, the Scar, of course, 58%, the Vaznev 38%. So this is a massive difference, of course. I mean, look, we've heard the discussion over the last few days. Yeah, the Scar, just as good as the M4. If you ban the M4, the same issue with the Scar. Not the case, really. Okay, yes, the Scar is still the dominant gun. We're still seeing it far more often, almost twice as often, but not quite. Certainly not more than twice as often as we were seeing in the first week of the CDL than the Vaznev. But, yeah, I think over time as well, we'll see more SMGs. This is always how it tends to go. The SMGs over time get stronger and stronger. The SMGs figure out their routes, they figure out where to take the gunfights from, and the SMGs become more and more viable as time progresses. And if you're up close and personal, the Scar just doesn't cut it up close against the Vaznev like the M4 did. I think that's one of the key weaknesses with that fire rate, of course. And there has been a bit of drama kicking off about this, right? And we'll talk about Scump in a few minutes' time, but he was also discussing this, the fact that getting used to having the Vaznev in play and using the TAC as well, and actually kind of, you know, going back and forth between those two weapons, because it's not like right now, traditionally you might see two SMGs, one flex player and one AR. So you've got your main AR using, let's just say, the M4, and let's say we look at a game like, you know, World War II, where you've got the SGG in play, that's your main AR weapon. You've got your flex guy who can either use the bar, he can use the STG, or you can use the PPSH, and then I've got two PPSH players on the SMG as it was at the time. This game, it's more like one full-time SMG, in OpTic's case it'd be Shotzzy, one flex player who either runs the Vaznev or the Scar, and then two Scar players, pretty much how it goes right now. And it's funny what Slasher says on this, I think, just because Slasher a few days ago, we saw him getting into some debate, let's say, with Methods and others on, you know, whether this is actually going to make much difference, right? Because we saw some pros say, oh yeah, it doesn't matter, you get rid of the M4, nothing's going to change, the meta's still going to be terrible, it's still going to be, maybe it's even going to get worse, right? Who knows? And look, Slasher says, I definitely didn't forget all of those faded takes I heard on Twitter, you know, state of the Hex pack, right? Because people were claiming that it was not going to change anything, whereas it actually had a massive difference in terms of, I think, the watchability of this meta for the long term. And even as Slasher goes on to say, I'm not surprised that it makes a big difference. A lot of people who lost all privileges to be heard in the Slasher World League. So this is pretty funny that, yeah, Slasher, after trying to re-establish the Slasher World League where he makes the decisions, a lot of people maybe in this gentleman's agreement chat that had certain opinions that have proven not to be the case once we actually see it in reality and we get the M4 bans, and I think the meta is better to watch now with the Scar, then they've apparently lost all speaking privileges when the Slasher World League comes into full force, whenever that's going to be. Quick note also from Slasher on this, I heard him talking on the flank last night, and there's been some discussion on the apparent randomness in play with some of the spawns. He reckons, having played the game for a bit. Now, this might not be the case, we'll have to see, I suppose, but whether there's some sort of random number generator spawn situation happening in the controls, just because, like, the spawns in this one are very strange, it's got to be said, and it doesn't really feel like a lot of these spawns make a lot of sense on a large majority of the time. So as that Slasher says, control spawns are unreadable, legit a random variable somewhere in the code, I'm convinced. So we'll just have a look at this example here from JP Krez. This is the hotel control map, I'm presuming here, between OpTic and Los Angeles Thieves, and look at what happens here. So we've got number 6 that spawns up right next to the point, which probably makes sense given the situation. Then he takes down player number 1, 8 goes down, and then 8 spawns, well, first of all, 5 spawns all the way in the bottom left-hand corner. I really don't understand why 5 spawns there, like, especially when there's so many free spawns over here, especially when number 8 spawns right next to the point. It's like, well, hang on a second, 6 spawn there, 5 just didn't bother, spawned on the other side, and then 8 comes back in. It's like, okay, what's happening here? So, yeah, I don't know if the control spawns are just random, or if there's some element that keeps them relevant, because we see sometimes players think the spawns are random, and then it kind of turns out that actually, over the course of an entire season, you can start to figure out exactly what's going on, but yeah, far from guaranteed. But speaking of the OpTic series, right, they went down 3-1 yesterday to Thieves, they won 3-2 against London in the previous day, they also beat Florida last week 3-0, right, and then had that controversial series up against the Minnesota Rokkr. But yeah, they play Florida again after having 3-0'd them online, they play them again on LAN in their first match later on this week. But Scump has been the absolute demon for this OpTic team. None of the other OpTic guys have really got particularly close to this top 10 list for overall KD. Scump has gone positive in every single series he's played so far. It's his final season of his career, and he's been the hard carry for this team. When he doesn't hard carry, things get a bit sketchy, and if he doesn't go off in a half one, if he doesn't go off in a control, if he doesn't clutch up in search and destroy, the team is not looking all so promising at times. And that's definitely an interesting one for OpTic to think about. Dashy hasn't looked so good. Yes, Shotzzy's been a bit under the weather, which I think is probably holding him back, and iLLeY's had some good series. But yeah, lots to talk on here on Scump, and Karma's giving his thoughts on some nice plays that Scump was making, and even on the flank, Octane was coming on discussing, like, damn, look at the king go, this guy is gross at the game, and they're pretty much unanimously agreeing that Scump is their best player right now.
I think there's besides the embassy hard point, I think OpTic threw, and I mean, you'll see how they managed to throw in the sense, but yo, Scump, honestly, you gotta tip it, bro. This guy, I said it yesterday. He is their best player. Like, not from just like, you know, statistical standpoint. I think he's just playing the best, and he's been playing the best guy out of the entire team.
You might see some weird tears in the screen. You might see some black screens. The CDL was dealing with some production issues today, so hopefully when we get to Raleigh, we don't have to deal with any of that stuff.
The longer he waits, the easier this becomes for Scump. Oh, he's gonna make.
Oh my God, good read. Don't look away. Don't look away.
Doesn't have the right gun.
Oh, he's waited. He's waited. Is he gonna let him plant, or is he just gonna wait for it? I think PaulX may have seen him.
PaulX has waited.
He did see him. He was thinking he was gonna push as well, and Scump was just laid in the corner. And that is unbelievable.
That's typical, bud.
From both players.
That's a ginger ninja.
And thought he was gonna push. But
Hell
Scump,
yeah.
the veteran, said, no,
and if we look at some of the numbers here, comparing Scump's highest ever KD in an online qualifier. So we haven't really seen online qualifiers since, well, this is since the Call of Duty League was incepted. But Scump's KD over the past few matches has been the highest he's ever achieved in the last few years. We see Vanguard Stage 3, he had a 1.06. Cold War Stage 4 and Stage 5 was also great. Vanguard Stage 2 as well. But Modern Warfare 2 Stage 1, and this is the thing, Cold War Stage 4, Stage 5, Scump was considered by many, including Octane, to be OpTic's best player, and he was having a great time at the end of Cold War, and of course didn't really work out for them at the World Championship. But this statistically was his best performance since the start of the qualifiers. I'm not exactly sure whether they also counted that last map against Minnesota Rokkr, just because I think officially the sources say that Minnesota Rokkr map that they played that was forfeited in the final round with a replay, I believe those stats were voided from the official calculations, and if that's the case, then I think Scump would have had at least a 1.2 here, because I think his first weekend KD KD was like a 1.3, but then it dropped down to like a 1.27 or something after that series. So I think you would have had a 1.2 overall if that map was counted and was completed, let's say, in the way that maybe it should have been. But look, is this a concerning thing for OpTic? I wonder if that's another question here, just because obviously, you know, the drama that happened in the first week shouldn't really be happening for Scump's last dance. But is Scump's obviously not really meant to be the best player on this team, especially at the end of his career as he is now, and has confirmed that to be the case. So, like, obviously it's a good thing for Scump and for OpTic that he's playing very well, but it does seem like they're almost a little bit too reliant on him going off at the moment, and they do need to figure things out elsewhere. Scump, I think this game suits Scump incredibly well, and it's definitely exciting. I think OpTic fans should be happy, really, that Scump's going off, just because it shows that Scump's very much in tune with this game, and when the team starts to figure things out a little bit more, and maybe you get more production from Shotzzy and Dashy on certain maps. I mean, you guys remember Control last year? They were just so good in Control at the start of the season, largely because Dashy had like a 1.5 on defense on every map he played on. Haven't really seen that so far, but it does feel like Scump is relied on not just to clutch him in the respawns, but also to win 1v1s in search, to win 1v2s in search, to, you know, just make veteran plays that win you series, and that's what Scump's been doing to great effect. But you feel like he can't keep up this level forever necessarily. I mean, as we just looked at, this has been his highest online qualifier performance in the last 3 years since this happened. It seems unlikely that he can replicate that performance necessarily in stage 2, so they're going to need to work on it behind the scenes to make sure the other guys can continue to turn up when required. The major, of course, is going to be absolutely crazy, and even getting out of that group is not going to be a guarantee for sure, with Toronto and Florida and one of the decent challenger teams in there as well. Quick note from Clayster here, we are now the Vegas Legion via one more Paris UOV5 gifted. So yeah, I think, well, I'm hoping that I can stop saying Paris, but yeah, Vegas Legion, it is official now. So congratulations to Clay and the boys. Definitely Clay not wanting to be associated with Paris if he can at all help it. Quick note on the map set as well, just because we saw yesterday Fortress Control not looking so good. We did see some calls from, I think, Slasher and others to potentially get rid of Fortress Control and bring in its place Mikado Control. I believe they played and tried Mikado for a couple of weeks really, or maybe even just a week. I don't know what the pros were thinking, but it didn't play great, but they decided not to go with it and play Fortress instead, even though at times like the CDL just made their own decision to what the map set was going to be. But yeah, many say that honestly Fortress should probably go. The spawn trap on the defensive side that you can put the attacking team in is absolutely brutal, to be honest. There needs to be another lane added in like JP suggested a few days ago. But yeah, still, I'm not really convinced the Fortress Control is ever going to be a good map, or even Fortress in general is a good map, because in Search and Destroy, incredibly one-dimensional. Like, there is just one bomb site that is used. So yeah, maybe they need to get rid of Fortress Control, bring in Mikado, and I'm just hoping that sooner rather than later we get another search map in that we can replace it with as well. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, take care, and I'll see you next time.